Are you ready to expand your life and reality? Join us for the next hour with Jamie Bates as she shares life-changing thoughts, techniques, and awarenesses to help you expand your reality.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jamie Bates, consciousness facilitator and expander of realities. My mission with my radio show is to create greater awareness of what is possible and to expand you beyond the limitations of this reality. I am grateful you are joining me today. And today I have a very special show for you. I have one of my dear clients, Tanya, joining us. Tanya found me 2 years ago, actually this month. She lives in a different country than me, and so I'm very grateful for the power of social media. And Tanya is joining us today as she is gracious enough to come on today and share a very personal experience and allow me to talk about her experience and herself to help others. So, hi, Tanya.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're really, I'm very grateful for Tanya. She's been with me for the last 2 years, and really the amount of growth and expansion that has happened in my world and in hers is amazing. So thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.
So today, with the show, I've kind of, I'm naming it Deal with the Devil, because that is kind of the closest energy I can explain. So Tanya made a deal with the devil, and I'm using air quotes here, people, because it wasn't really a deal with the devil that she made. It was really beyond that, but it kind of sums up what we're talking about. So Tanya had a traumatic experience, and she did the same thing that we all do when we're put in a position like that. And she asked for the situation to change. And in exchange for that change, she agreed to give her power away. And so I don't know, do we want to talk about that? I feel like maybe we should expand first, because this is really kind of, Tanya has such a unique experience, and I feel like each and every one of us can really identify with that, especially if you're a mom. We can identify with what we would do for our children, and Tanya had just a very, very life-changing situation happen in her life, and again, like, she did what I think all of us would do, is that place where we go, okay, I need to change, and whatever it's going to take to change it, I don't care, I'll do anything. I'll give up, places of me. I'll give up my power. I'll give up my potency. I'll never stand in who I really be, to just really change this. And so let's kind of, let's expand out before we go any further, so we can all kind of look at this in our own life. So let's go ahead and put our barriers down, 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 our barriers down. Take some nice deep breaths, and we're just going to expand our beings today. We're going to allow ourselves to go as big as the state that we're in, and we're going to go all the way out and all the way down and all the way up. And go ahead and make yourself as big as the country that you're in, all the way out and all the way down and all the way up. And as big as the planet that we're all on. And we're just expanding out our beings, bigger, faster, bigger, faster, bigger, faster, bigger, faster. And the universe, and the multiverse, multiple universes, and times that by a million, 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 all the way out to the space of who you be, as the infinite being that you be. Awesome. So Tanya contacted me a few years ago to really kind of change some things in her life. And initially, when she contacted me and we got on our first session, the very first thing that I was aware of was there was a time in Tanya's life where something had happened. And it was this time where she had literally given herself away. And we started talking about it. So Tanya, can you share with us what happened and how that kind of felt for you?
Sure. We have two daughters, my husband and I, and our oldest, when she was, oh goodness, about 11, 12 years old, started to experience severe headaches. And, they would last for probably up to 10 days. She had a few that would do that, and they would come and go. It wasn't consistent. There didn't seem to be any kind of pattern to it or anything. It would just randomly show up. And, after a few months of this, it took her to the doctor and took a look at things, and they didn't really know. They were like, well, could be this, could be that, gave her some painkillers and things. And then it didn't really resolve. Things started to get worse. She started experiencing vision issues. When in her peripheral vision, she would get waves and weird things happening, a lot of really bad muscle tension in her neck and in her back, and was just to the point where she couldn't even move her head. And, we tried different things and finally ended up taking her for a CAT scan, and they found a giant aneurysm at the base of her brain, in between her brainstem and her spine. And so at that point in time, the surgeon who happened to be at the hospital at the time that was looking at the results said, we can't operate externally on this because of the location of it. And he said, he wasn't confident that traditional methods of repairing this were going to work because of the size and location of where this aneurysm was. So it was a shock, to say the least. It's not something that you want to hear for sure.
Definitely not.
No, and to have him, who was the top surgeon in this area, say those words to you, you kind of go into a beyond space. It's like, well, if you don't know how to fix it, what's going to happen? Now, the interesting part of this is my daughter, who was only 12 years old at the time, actually was quite relieved, because she didn't know what was going on. She was in so much pain, and she, I'm in tears. And she looked at me and she goes, "It's okay, Mom. They know what it is. They can fix it now." And I remember looking at her and going, "Did you not just hear the words that this man spoke to you?" He didn't know what he was going to do. But in her mind, she was confident that, they knew what it was, so now they could fix it. So she actually was scheduled for surgery. We had to leave the province and go to another province. I'm in Canada. So the surgery she had to undergo was not available here. So we went, and they attempted to repair it using coils and stents. But when they went in and had one of the coils, they hadn't released it yet, but they said the turbulence in her aneurysm was so great that the coils weren't going to react the way that they wanted them to. And so they actually paused and came out and had us come in and ask us what we wanted them to do. So your 12-year-old's laying on the operating table with, this line into her brain, and they're asking us what we want them to do. And so we just said, well, you're the experts. But she came in here walking and talking and still functioning fine. And if you can't guarantee that this is going to fix it, then, we're going to stop. Now, they had told us that there was new technology coming out, but it wasn't available yet. And so we would have to wait.
So the kind of just looking at that from a mom's perspective and really feeling how much pressure and how much just beyond space that really puts you in.
It was. From the time of her diagnosis to the time of her surgery was a few weeks for the first time. And I did go into that space where I said, I will give up my life if you just save her. And that was the point, looking back now, that I did give myself up.
Yeah. Yeah, and as a mom, I mean, I know that all of us do that. Any of us would really, even as a relative, I think when you see especially a child and that you love and care about going through something very scary and very traumatic like that, that is our first go-to, right? You know, I will do anything. I will give up me. I will give up my life. I will lay down and die to change this.
Right, because it wasn't something that I could fix.
Hmm.
It wasn't something I could make better or make go away. It was something that was completely out of my scope of
Absolutely.
being able to do anything about. And so, yeah, it was a lot of just let her be okay. I mean, she was a healthy, vibrant, loving child. And you go into that whole, it's not fair.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
all of
so
that. So
what happened after what did they end up doing with that surgery?
they stopped it and just removed everything because they hadn't actually released any of the coils, and so they took the way they do this surgery is internally. So they go in through the groin and they actually thread this very fine wire up until they get up to the brain. And so they just removed everything. And then she actually had some issues after that where they couldn't stop the bleeding um, because they'd given her blood thinners or whatever to make sure nothing clotted. And it took a week before she was able to leave the hospital. And the hardest thing was when she woke up, she said, "Did they fix it, Mom?" And I had to tell her, no, they couldn't. But we still held on to the hope that, this new technology was going to be available. So we came back home and were put in touch with another doctor who is originally from our province, but had been working in the United States, specifically in Cleveland, around this new technology. It was his specialization, and he'd been sent there from our province to do this. And so they put us in touch with him, and he said he believed that this new device was going to be her best bet. And he said, there was other possibilities, but he didn't feel any of them were going to be as successful. He said, we could do something, but she could end up with brain damage or be, worse. It could rupture. She could die. It was a very serious thing and very rare for her age. The type, the size, everything about it was unique and rare. And so he decided to advocate for her and go to the company because this new device was in the experimental stage, and it had only been used on 2 other individuals in North America. It had been used, I think, on 6 or 7 people in Europe, and that was it. And none her age. Like, it had all been people 50 years and older. And so he had a colleague that also was working in this area, and together they had to convince the FDA to approve it because it was experimental, and they also had to convince the owner of the company to allow them to use it because it was in the experimental stage, and if something had gone wrong, it could have jeopardized the whole process of him developing this. But because he had young children at home and just for some reason decided, his own children actually convinced him. It was kind of a unique story. He went to meet them, the 2 doctors, and when he got home, he told his family about his decision to allow them to use it. And before he got home, and his kids had put lifesavers on his pillow.
Aw.
And told him that, he had made the right choice, and that they were proud of him for doing that, even though it could jeopardize his company. So that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So this was the end of January, and by the time all the processes got into play, it was April, the beginning of April, before she could be scheduled for this, and then we had to fly to Cleveland, so leave our country and fly to Cleveland. That was the most difficult trip of my life because we had to take 2 separate flights, not knowing if that was going to affect anything. The fact that she still had issues all the time, it was very volatile. We didn't know what was going to happen. So we made those 2 flights, got there. We had a week of appointments and testing and different things that she had to go through. And we still didn't have FDA approval at this point. The surgery was scheduled for Friday. We got there Sunday. They didn't approve it till Thursday night at 6:30.
Wow.
So so we filled our days with doing other things. We went to the zoo and we went to shopping malls and we tried to do that. But I was in a constant state of anxiety from the day she was diagnosed until the day she had her surgery. It was successful. She did end up having the surgery. They repaired it within 24 hours. The aneurysm had shrunk and there was no more bleeding into it. Within 2 days, it was completely, I think, 99% fine. And by the end of the week, it was 100% good. And we went home. She was only in the hospital for 2 days. We stayed in Cleveland an extra week to make sure everything was okay. Came home and she hasn't had any issues since. The only thing she has to do is take aspirin every day.
And that's amazing.
Yeah,
super.
It was a miracle.
It
was.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that story. And I would like to say the strength that you have in your voice now, in your ability to be able to talk about it, is amazing. Because I know that, especially when it's around your children, how very hard that is to express. And I would like to kind of acknowledge how much you've grown and how much you've been able to really heal from that situation since we've been working together. So can you explain to people, like, even when we first started really looking at this, were you able to talk about this situation without it causing like major upset for you?
No. It wasn't easy. Anytime I brought it up in my thoughts, even it would create almost that same energy or feelings of anxiety. It would take me back to the whole situation and remembering, and my body would almost relive it.
Mm-hmm.
Each time, even though I knew she was fine, even though I knew, and it would play games with my head. It was like, well, it was experimental, like, who knows what's going to happen. I didn't check into any kind of awareness around the situation or anything. It would simply bring it back. And so it was incredibly difficult. We had to go, well, we didn't have to go, but they asked us to actually come speak to an FDA advisory panel in Washington a few years after she'd had the surgery and was fine, because they wanted to get approval of it to be used after that point in time. So she was one of 5 patients that were actually asked to come and speak. And we had our whole speech we had to submit ahead of time and, be approved and everything else. And the 2 of us, like our whole family went, but my daughter and I were the ones that were going to speak to the panel. And I got up there and I had everything written down, but they put up an image of the aneurysm on the screen, which I could see because it was a great big huge television screen, so that the whole room could see it. As soon as I saw that image, I just completely contracted. I couldn't even speak. I said a couple sentences. She actually had to take the papers from me, and my daughter read it herself because I couldn't even discuss it at that point in time. And it had been a few years already, like 2 or 3 years since she'd had her surgery. So no, like I said, it was really hard to.
And I feel the intensity of that, and as a mom, I know I can feel that connection with how vulnerable and how scary of a time that was, and this is really what I'm so thankful that you're on here talking about, because so often I talk to people who have situations like yours, and it can be, 10, 15, 20 years later, and there's still so much pain and anxiety and upset around the situation, that there's they literally can't bring themselves to even talk about it. And I want to kind of bring that to everyone's awareness, that when we're holding on to the situation in that way, when we're still in the energy of that, there's a lot of different things that are happening around that. Now, and me and Tanya have had several conversations about this over. This was kind of our first thing that we really dove into when we started working together, and really changing that. Because the thing is like, when you looked at your daughter, were you able, how many years had it been when we started working together?
8. It had
8.
been 8 years, yeah, since it
Okay.
happened. It was 10 years this April.
Okay,
Sorry, my phone's ringing in the background.
that's okay. So it'd been 8 years. So in the after, let me rephrase that. So when you would check in at that point when we started, were you able to look at your daughter as a healthy, thriving individual? Or when you looked at her, was there still a lot of pain attached to that for you?
There was, because there was still pain attached. I saw that she was still functioning, and, a part of me was okay that knowing that she was okay, but there was also that fear of the unknown. It's like, well, what if it did ever come back? What if something else happened? It wasn't completely, oh, she's fine, everything's going to be okay. I think the nature of what it was always kept some doubt and fear there that it may return.
Yes. And I want to look at that for all of us, because I think we all have those situations in our lives where we've had something traumatic happen, and every time we we go back to that situation, or we even look at that person that was involved in the situation, and what we see is the remnants of the fear and the upset. Even though we know that, like, life has moved on, it's still like there's still that, I'm going to say, that knife even that kind of cuts you. And I did a show a while ago about my divorce, and I talked about that, and about how every time I would relook at my children, I would go to that place where I felt sad for them. Did you feel like sad for her? Did you even feel maybe like scared for her?
At times, definitely, and I felt bad, because I think as a parent we have certain expectations when we have children for what we want their life to look like. We want them to experience all the good things, and we don't usually stop and consider that these kinds of things can happen. And so when they do, they really mess with those expectations of what we want for our children, our families to experience. And all of a sudden it creates that fear. It's like, oh, this wonderful life that I had all planned out just got completely turned upside down. And so, part of it was still a fear for her. Part of it was, I was sad because it changed her life too.
Oh,
Not,
absolutely, absolutely.
she missed out on part of her high school because she wasn't able to do physical activities for a couple years afterwards, because she was on some very strong anticoagulation medications to make sure there was no clot that would form on these devices that were implanted into her artery. So, I felt bad that her life was turned upside down. It was a traumatic experience for her, the pain that she went through, and all of that. So yeah, there was a lot of, it was a very complicated thing thinking about it, because there was, the fear of it coming back, sad for her that it had happened, all of those things. It was something that I couldn't prevent. I couldn't do anything about. I had to put complete trust in other people in order to help her. So that, you lose that control. I
Yeah,
think,
absolutely. And you remember that energy every time you look at her.
yeah,
And and I think it was really a beautiful thing to really watch you change that, and really watch you start to realize that that there's like this place where I don't know exactly what energy I'm looking at here, where you can move on, and you don't have to be kind of prisoner to those energies anymore, and you don't have to feel bad and guilty, and you can kind of move forward and move beyond, and um, give yourself a new space. And when we started initially talking about this, one of the things the first thing I was really aware of is um, these places where you hadn't particularly done that thing that we've talked about here, is that the kind of deal with the devil energy, where you really started giving up parts and pieces of you to just make it through this. And I know so many of us do this. I mean, I think probably every one of us at some point in our life have had an experience that we have went through, and we have prayed in order to change the experience. We will do anything to change it. We will, I can remember being small and going through a level of my mom was in an abusive relationship at the time, and I remember even praying myself, like, if she gets through this, if we make it through this alive and everything's okay, I will never step into the full power of myself. I will give up parts and pieces of me. I remember specifically saying as a child, I will not be as powerful as I truly can be if you will change this. And I know me and you had several conversations about that yourself. And can you remember specifics of what you said when you were going through this yourself?
I remember laying in bed and just, if you want to call it praying, whatever, and saying, just let her be okay. Let her be safe. I will give up my life. I said those words out loud. I will give up my life. Just let her be okay. And
Yeah.
so, it's interesting because we've looked at it now. I can look back, but I didn't even really fully comprehend exactly what I was saying or doing. It's just, you just want everything to be okay, and you would literally do anything, including give up your life
Mhm.
for your
Mhm.
child to be okay. But I think sometimes we say those things, but we don't really fully comprehend exactly what we're saying. We don't really think that you're going to have to give up your life. And I did. I gave up myself, because after that point in time, what people don't understand is, she was okay. So everybody else kind of continued on with their life that had focused on it at the time with us, but it was like, oh, she's okay. They didn't have to deal with that day to day, still the fear of what might happen. It was like, oh, well, it's a miracle. She's fine. She's okay. And they could continue on with their life. This impacted um, all of us in my family, really, but really strongly for me for years afterwards. It got to the point where I kind of had almost like a breakdown, I guess, slowly. It wasn't like one day I woke up and it just kept piling on because I didn't deal with it. I just kept thinking, well, she's okay. I should be okay. Not really taking a look at how it had impacted me or what it had done until I talked to you and started taking a deeper look at this and going, I made those deals. I made a deal to give up my life, and it did.
So
I,
tell me what that means. Like how was your life after that? What did you experience? What happened throughout that?
um, Anxiety. I had always had, some form of anxiety kind of ever since I was a kid, but it became quite pronounced. Depression, not wanting to go out, not wanting to see people. Physically, my body just, weird symptoms and things like my muscles wouldn't work one day and was tired and no energy, and even I like to play the piano, and even playing the piano was a chore. My fingers wouldn't do what I wanted them to do, and it was just, it kept getting more and more and more to the point where I didn't want to interact in life. I'm sure my husband was worried about me. My parents were worried about me. Everybody's just, you need to go to the doctor. You need to go get some medication, and you need to get better. And I knew it wasn't like I didn't realize, I knew something wasn't right. But at the same time, I didn't want to take that route. I was like, there's something deeper that I have to figure out and get to. And it took me till I started looking at, different alternative therapies and energy work and that kind of thing, until I was able to get to the bottom of what was creating it.
So to kind of look at this, like, so when you said you would give up your life, you didn't necessarily really, it wasn't like you were, you died, but what happened was your life literally kind of started to cease to exist. Like the things that you once enjoyed, you no longer enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And things that you used to be able to do with ease, you weren't able to do. The way that your life had existed before was ceasing to exist, and that's the thing I want people to look at is when you start making deals like that. What for me the bigger picture looks like, what that looks like is when you start saying things like, I literally will do anything to change this. I'm going to go back to, I know because I've personally experienced this when I went through and said, I will give up my power. One of the things that I realized was there was parts of pieces of me that I could no longer access because I had said out loud various times that, and I remember the way it felt to me. And it's one of those memories for me as a child that sticks out as one of those things that I did that was very, like, I don't remember a whole lot of my childhood, but I remember that. And I think that even like you said, you vividly remember in a situation when you decided, hey, I will do this if I get this.
Right.
And when you do that, what you actually do is, and the thing is we have to look at here is there is beings all over this world who are willing. We know that there's beings that are outside of us that are very powerful and very strong. And they're capable of manipulating energy in a way to create different outcomes. And when you start playing in those realms where you go outside of you to create something as showing up differently, you really truly start giving away your power. You make a deal that becomes a solidified energetic deal that actually starts creating your life as showing up differently. And that's exactly what was happening with you.
Absolutely.
And I see this very often with people. Over the years, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've helped a lot of people who have gone through the same exact thing. And so today, I before we have you continue here, Tanya, I want to really look at, for each and every one of us listening. So where is everywhere that you gave away your power in everything all of that is? And what we want to do here is we want to grab all of that, 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 and all of the beings, doings, and others that you agreed to give your power over to. Let's bring all of them up. And let's freeze them, 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 freeze them. And the most amazing thing about this is this is your universe, and you can start to take back control of that universe by choosing to say, you know what, this is my universe and I get to decide. And so everywhere that you've given your power over to these, all of these, can we just choose to remove all of that from all of your universes? And can we all just choose that now? I think you say, yes, I choose that.
I choose that now.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. And banish, vanquish, 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 revoke, recant, rescind, reclaim, renounce, denounce, destroy and uncreate, make null and void, 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 and everything you said you would do for them and everything they said they would do for you. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of your universes? And can we just choose that now?
I choose that now.
Some vaporize, 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 revoke, can't rescind, or claim, renounce, denounce, destroy, and uncreate, make null and void, make null and void, make null and void, make null and void. And I think that this brings up a very, very interesting energy, because it's one of the things that me and Tanya work through is there's multi-level layers here of these contracts that we make, right? And when you start releasing these contracts, I know that many of us go to that fear of like, okay, well, I made this contract, right? And potentially that contract had a part to do with the reason why, she even got better, she even healed, we even found the doctors, like all of it. So if I remove that and I actually take my power back, does that mean that there's a possibility that that could come back? Like if I remove that, is that going to remove the places where she's gotten better? So what we want to do is we just want to clear all that energy as well. So everything, all of that is, and anywhere that you would have fear around the idea that if you release this contract, that that means that that the person that you helped will have to go back into the suffering or the disease or the disorder or whatever it is that they're going through. Everything, all of that is. Yes, and all of that, 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 all of that. Can we just choose to remove all of that from all of the universes? And can we just choose that now?
I choose that now.
Vaporize, 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 vaporize. Now, and me and Tanya worked a lot on this because there was a lot of fear around that, and that's completely warranted fear, right? Because she did have the outcome that she was looking to create, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, so if I remove that, am I going to be instilling a different outcome? And so we worked a lot through that, and one of the things that that number one that I think is really important for all of us to get is each and every one of us is here on our own unique journey, and your daughter had such an amazing outlook on the whole thing, didn't she?
Yes.
And she really knew that the reason that she had this was for such a greater reason than anything. And would you share kind of some of the things that she kind of went through during this process, and what she has kind of come up with through the, I mean, you guys did some groundbreaking things here. I mean, you got the FDA to approve it. I mean, this was experimental. I mean, so many levels of this. I mean, she really changed medicine. And what a courageous thing for her to do.
Yeah. Like I said, when she was first diagnosed, she turned and looked at me and said, they know what it is, they'll fix it. And it didn't really sink in until we started working together that she did have an awareness of things were going to be okay. She just, I I wasn't ready to receive that at all.
Oh,
At that
absolutely.
point.
I get
at that
it.
point.
Yeah.
Because, she even mentioned afterwards that she would have friends that would come over and visit with her, and they would be upset for her. They would be in the trauma and the drama, and they would look at her and they go, why aren't you laying on your bed, crying? Why aren't you upset? Why aren't you? And she couldn't really give them an explanation. She just wasn't. She definitely would get upset about any of the pain that she was experiencing, the headaches or the vision or the muscle tension. That annoyed her more than anything because it prevented her from living her life to the degree she wanted to. But as far as, fear about the surgery or fear about them doing anything, she didn't have that. It just wasn't there.
Because she had that knowing she was going to be fine.
She did. And she couldn't really explain it at that time or anything else, but she literally wasn't, I shouldn't say wasn't worried at all. I mean, she picked up on other people's worry, but she didn't go into that space of, fear and anything else. And then afterwards, after the surgery was successful, I think it was a couple months later, they actually performed almost the exact same thing on a 13 or 14-year-old boy in Europe. And they wouldn't have if she hadn't had the success.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, because again, it was still experimental, but they got approval because of the success that she had had. And so his life was saved. And then when the FDA approved it, there was many more. But there was actually another family from the States, because this was before it had been approved, that came up here to Saskatchewan because the doctor that performed the surgery, he ended up coming back to Saskatchewan and starting a practice here and in the hospital, because that was the whole point of them sending him, was to learn and to do new things and bring it back here. So he actually came back shortly after Amanda's surgery, and so we were able to have him here to consult with anything that we need. She hasn't had any issues, but he's been here and he's been performing surgeries ever since then with this device that have saved many, many people. This one particular family came up here, and I personally got to speak to the mom and tell her about our experience to help her make the choice to come and to have it done. And, even about the doctor kind of answering any questions there, because even he had a whole different outlook on what's possible around medicine and surgery and that kind of thing, which was key. But yeah, and he's created a whole new practice here. We've been to the hospital here and given our story to help raise funds for a specific set of equipment that would help do that. So it's kind of snowballed in the effect of how far out it's gone, and now this device is approved and has been used all over the world.
And that's amazing. Awesome.
Yeah. So
the whole thing of it is regardless, for me, it feels like regardless of if you would have given your power away or not, you would have had the same outcome. Because she chose that path in her life because there was something amazing and great that came of it. And she was strong enough to be able to really do that in a way where she did it, and she did it with grace, and she did it with a sense of, she knew she was going to come out on the other side and she was going to be fine. And that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even her whole outlook on life. I mean, she doesn't take anything for granted. Her teachers at the high school, when she graduated, we would have parent-teacher interviews with them, and that's just what they would talk about, is that how incredible it was that she went through this experience and has this amazing outlook on life, and how it's inspired them to look at life differently. So.
And that's awesome. The lives that she's touched and the things that she's created since is really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it was really when we met and we started really kind of hammering this out for you and getting you beyond this, it was like really acknowledging how amazing the whole event really was, and really bringing you back in you. Because of that separation, because of those places and spaces where even going through trauma in that degree, it's like, and I know that you as a survivor of that, I know you can identify these places where you can even look back and you can see how overwhelmed you were with emotion, and how you kind of stopped functioning in who you really were.
Yeah, you completely shut down. You don't want to feel anymore. I think that was part of afterwards, because it is so intense and so overwhelming. You don't want to feel anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your body just doesn't want to experience that at any level anymore, and so you start shutting things off and putting things away, and it's kind of like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. And the thing is, you don't want to feel the intensity of the pain, but it also shuts off the joy.
Absolutely.
Because you can't shut off one without the other, because they're together. So yeah, even though you put up the walls and the barriers and shut things off, you affect your whole self. Definitely.
Absolutely. And so can you tell me when we started kind of really diving in and changing this, what were some of the awarenesses that you had maybe along the way that you could maybe share and kind of help others that have went through this kind of the same experience where they've given up kind of their power and giving up themselves? What are some of the things that as you started to heal that you started to really become aware of?
Well, I think the biggest one that, we talked about was the fact that her journey was her journey, and I wasn't in control of that. So even though I had, done all these agreements and things to try and make it better, essentially that wasn't my place, and I wasn't going to affect it because that was her life. And, you know, uh, I became aware of how much I had tried to protect both of my children from situations, from being hurt, from experiencing anything that I felt was bad or wrong, and tried to shelter them from it instead of just giving them the tools to make decisions and choices for themselves that would work for them, instead of what I thought they should be doing. And so as a parent, that's changed for me, because I thought I was being a good parent, doing what you're supposed to do, what society tells you you're supposed to do, and not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting them to be wrong, or not wanting them to experience things that I felt were bad or horrible, instead of letting them choose what their journey was going to be. And so that was a huge piece, because I had to acknowledge that I didn't have control over anyone else's life. I only had control over the choices that I made and the reactions that I had, instead of trying to make everything okay. So
That's awesome.
that was probably the biggest piece, because it's completely changed how I interact with both my children now, and in allowing them to choose what works for them, even though sometimes it doesn't look like what I think it would be for me, but that's still okay.
Can you tell me how your relationship with her has changed in particular since you've really came to that awareness and since you've really worked through a lot of that emotional stuff?
Basically, just like I said, allowing her to make her own choices, but at the same time, we're able to have conversations now where she can ask me for advice, and take it if it feels right for her, and not if it doesn't. And I don't make her wrong if she doesn't choose it. It's we're much more open in our discussions, and I think closer in a lot of ways, because I'm not trying to shelter her. It's like, I'm not going to just tell her what to do. It's like, okay, well, there's this or there's this, and I'm in a space where I can show her possibilities but not choose for her.
So do you feel like that before that you still were trying to really make a lot of her choices in her life for her?
Yeah, and she's the type of kid that would let me do it because she didn't want to upset anyone. And so
Okay.
she would have let me choose things for her and not said anything, simply done it to keep the peace, kind of thing, to
So
make everybody happy.
can you tell me after the surgery was over and everything, within a year or two, did you feel like you were often very easily upset?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. My emotions were still very raw, and I would take things personally. Whenever anybody did anything, I was very touchy about things and would get hurt easily.
So
Yeah.
since then, so now how you function with her, can you see how much different that is? Do
Oh,
you engage in being emotional at all about what she chooses in her life anymore?
no, I mean, I can share emotion with her. Like if there's something upsetting for her, I can feel that and experience it with her, but I don't choose to project that at her. So I'm not, yeah, her choices are her choices, and I don't make them significant about me. Whatever she chooses is for her, and I have to trust that she's she can pick what she wants for herself, and whatever that looks like, that's best for her. It's not about me.
And that's huge. That's so, 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 so huge. Really, it's such an amazing, freeing experience when you can be in that space with your children. Don't you agree?
Oh, way more.
Yeah, it's way more easy to even function as a parent like that too, isn't it?
It is. It is. And it changes the dynamics of them feeling like they can come to you and talk to you without feeling like you're going to try and control what they're doing or judge them, or, even with my youngest daughter is probably even more so, um, because she knew what she wanted, and she didn't like being told other things, and would get very frustrated because she saw her path and she knew her choices were in her best interests, even if they didn't look like it to me. And so she would get very frustrated and upset, and she wasn't one to just let things go. We would argue. And so, allowing her to make choices that, I definitely wouldn't chose at her age at all, but allowing her to do it and allowing her to make those choices and to do it without judging has created a completely different relationship.
Awesome. Awesome. And when you started really taking even your power back for yourself, tell me how that's really even, how you've been able to really even transform your own life.
I get to acknowledge more of what I'm aware of and what I know, and choose how I react to things, or what I do. I think I was just kind of floating along before, letting whatever happened to me, and not really acknowledging that I'm the one choosing my life and creating it. And so now I do have that awareness that it's I'm the one that gets to choose. I don't get to be the victim, or I don't have to be. Sorry, not get to be. I don't have to be the victim of circumstances or other people's judgments or projections or choices. I get to choose what I do or what I don't do. And, whether that's society in general, whether that's my immediate family, it's up to me. And I think that's been a huge change in realizing just, we all create our own lives by the choices we make. And, if we want to play victim and decide that, everything that's wrong is somebody else's fault, well, that's what's going to keep showing up.
And even that maybe even other things have more power over your life than what you have for yourself.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's
We
amazing.
we have the power.
Awesome. And so how has that changed your life now? How does your life look different now than it did even, let's say, 3 years ago?
More sense of ease, less upset, less. I don't even know if I can explain it, because I can't even really perceive the space of where I was. I know there was experiences and things that I had, but I don't even want to really go back and feel that anymore. So it's just, I'm a different person completely. That's about all I can say is I am a completely different person. And it's just going to continue to get better and to change, and with more awareness and more choosing what works for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I'm so thankful for you really sharing your story, because I know as a mom especially, we get so it's so hard when you've experienced, and even if it's something that happened to you as a child, when you experience something that's traumatic like that and it takes you out of being you, and you really did, you fought for your life back. And I really want to acknowledge that in you. You did such an amazing job. You fought, and even though it was scary, and even though there was times that me and you had sessions, and I'm sure that you probably never wanted to talk to me again. but you came through, and you did, and I know there were times that it was hard to even get out of bed, and you chose it anyways. and you've come so far, and I've really watched you and even your family really kind of blossom into something amazing. And I'm grateful that you shared your story, because I know that I know there's people out there that can learn and grow and shift and change from knowing that you can go through a very traumatic experience like that, and you can heal, even if it's 10 or 15 or 20 years later. Because I know even for you it was 8 years when we started talking, and those are 8 years where even you can go into the space of feeling guilty about being that way, and you can feel sad that your life went that way, and you chose to go beyond all of that, and you chose to work with me to clear that out. And I know it's changed everything. and
Yes.
and I'm grateful for that, because I know that each and every one of us have those experiences where we feel like we're never going to get beyond it, and you chose it and you did it. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you, because I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own for sure. So I'm grateful. I followed the path of being led to you and the experiences that have helped me change this completely. So I am so grateful and so appreciative of all you've helped me with. If anybody out there is looking for some assistance, you might want to give this lady a call, because she's
Well,
pretty
thank you.
dynamic.
Thank you, Tanya. No, really, it was really my pleasure. It was really just so fun working with you, and really, really helping you to get over it. And it's like doing this work. It's like once you get on the other side and you can see how much better and how much clearer and how much freer life is. It's like it's so true. You just don't ever want to go back to that space again of being kind of held really victim to that circumstance and not really being able to move beyond it. And um, I know your story is going to inspire other people to really get beyond that pain and hurt and move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And I think, part of what really helped was because you understand as a mom, as a parent, and you were able to take a look at things from that perspective, which was invaluable to me, because I know there's others that just wouldn't connect with that and wouldn't have seen that that was the source of a lot of issues for me. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Awesome. So I'm grateful Tanya joined us today. And now on Expand Your Reality, we're going to be doing these different shows that are going to really be shedding light on these different experiences that people have, and how even something simple as, like I started with that deal with the devil energy, right? Where giving your power away can really create that type of circumstance in your life, and knowing that it's okay, and you can get beyond it, and you can heal your life. So thank you so much, Tanya, for joining me today, and thank you everyone for listening to us today. And I will talk to you all soon. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.
You have been listening to Expand Your Reality with your host, Jamie Bates. Thank you for listening.